going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Steelers Saturday Sit Down with Around the 412. I'm Smitty. That's Tyler. What's going on, Tyler?
Oh, nothing. Just another early morning, but I'm excited to talk some Steelers football. We had the bye week, so it was another week of kind of just sitting back, relaxing, watching things happen around the NFL. And I will say Thursday night, watching that football game between the Ravens and the Bengals, as a football fan, game was outstanding.
Maybe
But as
game of
an
the year
AFC
so far.
North
Yeah.
fan, I didn't really know which outcome I wanted more. I was really hoping
Mhm.
for a tie, if I'm being completely honest. But ultimately, that was a great game to watch. And I wanted to bring this up to you just because that happened recently. Is
Yeah.
this the best year that we've seen from Thursday night football games overall? Because I feel like we've had at least 5 to 6 games where normally Thursday night football is just a snore fest. But
Yeah.
recently, there's been some pretty good football games happening.
That's a good point. I mean, you hate to see like refs impact it the way you kind of did at the end of that Vikings-Rams game, but it was a good game, certainly. Broncos and Saints stunk. I'm just going back through here. I think the 49ers Seahawks was competitive for most of it. There was obviously that great game between the Falcons and Buccaneers early in the season that was on Thursday Night Football. That was an overtime win. Yeah, I mean, even if you can get like 3 or 4 good Thursday night games, I feel like out of it. Week 1, Chiefs and Ravens, right? I mean, that one was as well. So yeah, I'd say at least for me, there's 3 games that have been on Thursday Night Football that have been like of the better games so far this entire season. So yeah, I mean that's good. Kobe's was in here before we were. Or it's early out here in the. You mentioned how early it is for you. Early out here in the West Coast, but it's still Saturday. Steelers Saturday Sit Down, so we have to be here. He also said, "Go BYU, please beat Utah. Their fans are annoying." So you guys are on the same page here.
Yes. Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly. Utah fans
believe
are annoying.
Arizona, I believe Kobe.
I don't know if Boston is in here yet, but Boston knows too. Utah fans are annoying. I'm happy that the Big 12 as a whole gets to experience what I felt my entire life. And now the entirety of the Big 12 hates the University of Utah, and I'm here for it.
You know, it's interesting. I didn't realize that BYU was going to have such a large impact on this show, but I guess I should have known with you being on it. Yeah, I'm an Arizona Wildcat fan. Their fans are in asterisk mean. There we go. Emphasize the word mean there too, so all caps. Anyways, let's get into this matchup a little bit, Tyler. I don't think enough people are talking about this game on the surface. I think like on paper, on a national level, this should be talked about more. You have the number 3 scoring offense going against the number 2 scoring defense. Like this is a game to me that should be like in it's like television wise, most of the country doesn't see this one.
That's
Like
what I was going to say. This should be the where you see the map of the coverage every single week. This should be the game that has the majority of the country watching it just based off the matchup. You have a 6-2 Steelers against a 7-2 Washington Commanders. Going into the season, I understand like how improbable that probably seemed to most people. But at this point, you'd think that the game would be getting more respect than it is. I mean, this is a premier matchup at this point in the season. And on this specific Sunday, I think that, and maybe I'm a little biased, it's probably the best matchup of the day as far as two teams going at it.
Yeah, I was going down through the matchups. I mean, like, what is the other one that people are of course, like Philly and Dallas, you wouldn't have thought, the injuries that Dallas has had, and they just haven't been good even when they weren't hurt. Sunday Night Football's Lions and Texans, that could be okay. Bills and Colts, 2 maybe playoff teams in the AFC. Broncos and Chiefs. I mean, it's interesting to me that this game hasn't gotten talked about nearly as much, but certainly a good test to see where both teams are at, a good litmus test. And I think honestly going to define what happens here for the Steelers in the second half, because I feel like before the season, like you said, we wouldn't have had this matchup circled as this is a big one, but I think this is going to be a big one, not only in determining how the second half goes, but also for setting the narrative. I think there's a lot of people out there, like there's still a lot of Steelers detractors because of the schedule that they've had so far. That's certainly not going to be the case in the second half. And now you're playing a Commanders team that is much better than you anticipated. Great test in Jaden Daniels, who does a lot of things similar to like a Lamar Jackson. So I think it's going to be a good litmus test to see where the defense is at. I know that they've played well against Lamar in the past, but now the defense has a guy that you can QB spy with in Patrick Queen. You can bring Deshaun Elliott down and still play too high safety if you want to bring DeMonte Casey on the field to play on the back end with Minka. So, and you're getting Cam Sutton back this week. Like this defense, I think right now is better equipped to deal with this type of offense than they typically have been in the past. But again, like I'm not trying to take away from. I've been super impressed watching Washington. Obviously, they don't need my stamp of approval with what they've done, but I've been big Cliff Kingsbury, what's the word, detractor. I get like somebody that has really questioned how Cliff Kingsbury is going to succeed. And it's weird because historically, like his offense is awesome in the first half of the season and then fall off a cliff. No pun intended there. But I just there's things about this offense that seem sustainable and that are different than what they've done in the past. They have everybody playing at a really good level. And if you look at this roster on paper, it's not like a roster that you would think would be 7-2. So I really think that this is coaching. I think Dan Quinn's done a great job. I think Cliff Kingsbury's done a great job. And I think that a lot of their assistant coaches, Brian Johnson came over from Philadelphia. Anthony Lynn, who was the former Chargers head coach, who I think is a good coach, just maybe not fit for that role. They have a really good coaching staff, I think, and they're doing a lot of good things with the roster that they have on hand. Because again, I don't know where you were at. I thought the Commanders were certainly going to be on the rise, a team in the next couple of years if they hit on Jaden Daniels, but like this early, absolutely not.
Yeah, I don't think I thought, or really anybody thought they'd be at the position that they're in. Offensively, number 3 scoring defense in the NFL. They're the number 3 rushing attack in the NFL in yards per game, and they also have the number 3 in total yards per game as well. They're just third best in almost every offensive stat that is generalized, except for passing offense. In passing yards per game, they're 11th in the NFL, still top half. They've been accelerating at a high level offensively. Jaden Daniels has been the catalyst of that. I mean, how many people in the NFL are probably wondering why Jaden Daniels wasn't talked about more for the number 1 overall pick? I mean, hindsight is 2020 in that aspect, but what he's delivered so far with the Commanders, and like you mentioned, like all credit to the Cliff Kingsbury so far. I think that he's done a really good job. He's probably, and I thought this maybe not at a college level, but in the NFL, he's probably more just suited to be an offensive coordinator. And
Sure.
I think that he has what it is to be a head coach, but as an offensive coordinator, that could be more of the case. And from what you're seeing from the Commanders offense, it's playing at a high level. They're running the football very effectively. And that's probably going to be the story of the day tomorrow when it comes to the Steelers is how are they going to be handling the rushing attack from the Commanders, including Jaden Daniels, and also looking past this week just to look at next week too. If you wanted a tune-up game to get you ready to play Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, this is pretty much as good as you're going to get for a tune-up game because it's almost like playing them back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, going from Jaden to Lamar. Yeah, the running back situation, because my boy here was asking about it. We'll go back to the red zone thing. But so no Brian Robinson Jr. We should probably dive into the injuries a little bit here.
Yeah.
But Austin Eckler's on the team, and they've actually used him more. Like Brian Robinson Jr., I don't know if it's the same thing that he's been dealing with. He's been dealing with a hamstring thing, and he's been like not practicing throughout the week, but then playing on game days. I don't know if that's the exact same thing that he still is dealing with, but like obviously that path, I don't know that that's the best way to nurse that back to full health. So he's still been playing, but he's not going to play this Sunday. We'll see what the severity of it is. But to be honest, and I mentioned this, I think, on our Steelers show, I felt like this was more of an Eckler game anyway. The best way to slow down a good pass rush, which the Steelers obviously have, is through the screen game and getting them out in space, getting them in lighter boxes, similar to how the Giants were able to do so with Tyrone Tracy, who's a good receiving back. That leans more towards an Austin Eckler game. So to me, I thought we would see more of Austin Eckler in this one anyway than I would have Brian Robinson Jr. I think that it's still obviously impactful to not have him at all, but I think that I was expecting more of Eckler anyway than I was Brian Robinson Jr. Also, without their starting left tackle, though, and Cornelius Lucas, they're questionable on the right side as well. Austin Wiley, or Andrew Wiley, I'm sorry, is questionable. Their kicker, Austin Siebert, is questionable. And then we're not going to see Marshawn Lattimore. So from Washington thing, that's what we got. A lot of guys coming back for the Steelers. Obviously, we had the benefit of having our bye since this game, in between this and the Giants game. Getting Zach Frazier back in the mix, that's obviously huge. Cap tip to Ryan McCollum and the work that he was able to do. But Zach Frazier's a difference maker in the middle. He's already one of the best centers in the NFL. You're getting Cordero Patterson back. You're getting Justin Fields back. We'll see if they break out the packages we've been talking about. We've talked about that a little bit here too. Who we're not getting back is Nick Herbig. Still going to sit out another week. He's been dealing with a hamstring thing, and that just makes it, I don't know. I'm not saying that that's why they went out and got Preston Smith for a 7th or anything like that, but that's a nice insurance policy to have now created from the trade deadline to now, because if you didn't have him as the third edge rusher, I know that we didn't for the Giants game as well, but I'd be, worried about that depth, obviously. So I think that Preston Smith being in the mix is massive for that reason.
Yeah, I think so too. We talked about that on the Steelers show this week, that getting it for depth insurance for practically nothing going back to Green Bay, that's something that you do every single day of the week. Preston Smith is a guy that's played at a high level for a while in this league, and I think that having him as your third edge rusher, that's never a bad thing. Obviously, you want Herbig to be back, but if you can have a Preston Smith in there and not force Herbig to be back, or not necessarily force, but get him back before he's fully healthy, I think that's beneficial for the Steelers and the Steelers defense. I'm curious to see how they're going to defend the Commanders offensively with Brian Robinson out, with having to deal with Austin Eckler in the passing game. And would you think
and the way that they roll, like they go tempo? I mean, they use more tempo than anybody else. They go hurry up more than anybody else in the NFL. Yeah. So I think that the best way to combat that is win on first down. Like they got to set them behind the sticks on first down, so they can't be in a rush. But not to cut you off, you were saying something else there.
Well, I was going to say, do you think there's a chance in this game, since they're not going to have Brian Robinson, that if Eckler is going to be more of that third down passing sort of back, like, I mean, I'm sure they're still using him in a traditional running back capacity because Robinson's out, but are you going to see more of Jeremy McNichols in a traditional running back role more and have Austin Eckler as that kind of like passing back still?
Former Steeler Jeremy McNichols, by the way. Yeah. Like, people forget he had a cup of coffee here. He's had some moments too. Like, that's what I'm saying. Anybody that they're plugging into this offense has looked like a capable NFL player. And to me, that speaks to the coaching staff more than it does the personnel. Like, everybody has a talent level, obviously, when they come into the NFL, if you make it there. But obviously the coaching then is really what's going to get the best out of you and kind of determine that. So Jeremy McNichols, we haven't heard that name for years. And then he pops onto the map with Washington and all of a sudden looks like a capable running back. You could definitely see him, in my opinion, get like 10-ish touches. But again, I think that this is really going to be a game where, like, it wouldn't surprise me if Jaden Daniels has more rushing attempts than anybody else on the team in this one.
I kind of expect it.
Yeah. So I really think that, like, Austin Eckler is going to be the feature back from all of this. But I don't know it's going to be traditional, between the tackles, carries, or anything like that. I think they're going to get him out in space, use him in the pass game, kind of an extension of the run game, in the screen game, or if it's, quick tosses, pitches, like getting them out in space and trying to spread the Steelers out. But like the Steelers' second best tackle percentage of anybody. Like, they're not, like, I know that was an issue in past years. Has not been this year. I think you look at the additions of Deshaun Elliott, of Patrick Queen. Those are where those things are paying dividends. Joey Porter Jr. has obviously gotten better from year 1 to year 2 in that regard. I think that they're doing a really nice job out in space. So that's kind of what I'm looking at here. From their offense. I'll be honest, Jaden Daniels also, he's not a one-read quarterback, but he's been so good at identifying what the defense is doing and getting the ball to his first read. He's throwing it to his first read more than anybody else in the NFL. I think some people were trying to use that as a negative. To me, that says, again, going back to the coaching staff, they're doing a really nice job in terms of their concepts and getting these guys open. And Jaden knows where to go to the football, like right off the snap. So to me, a big key in this one is going to be, I assume Joey Porter Jr. is going to cover Terry McLaurin for most of the day. Like, I would shadow that one up pretty much.
I mean, he's done that a lot of this year anyway, going to the number one receiver. I don't know why that would change in this game. I think more curious to me is seeing what they're going to do with a guy like Zach Ertz, which he looks like he is 10 years younger than what he is right now. Out of nowhere. I thought his career was done a couple years ago.
I feel like the most praise we're giving the Commander side.
They are getting the most out of these players. I mean, we've seen this before with good tight ends. I mean, even starting back in week 1 with Kyle Pitts. But I'm just curious to see how they handle, like Zach Ertz, and more so than.
Look at this. Hey, our boy becoming a member. We appreciate you, brother.
Shout out, thank you. But yeah, I'm curious to see how they cover him. I'm curious to see what they do outside of Scary Terry, because I'm pretty sure everybody knows Joey Porter Jr. is going to shadow Terry McLaurin. And if you're taking away his first read, a lot of the time I'm sure that is Terry. They need to put a clamp on him, but how are they going to put a clamp on everybody else as well? And I think that the ever-growing threat of a rushing attack while there's being a pass play done by Jaden Daniels is something that the Steelers are going to have to deal with, and it's something that they see from Lamar Jackson as well. If there's good coverage down the field, that can still open things up for Jaden Daniels to just take off. So there's going to be a lot of discipline on this defense this week.
I just thought of this, hadn't brought it up this week yet, so this is a fresh thought that you guys are getting on here. But they're getting Cam Sutton back in the fold this weekend. I wonder if that's an answer for Zach Ertz or Ben Sinnott, like whoever the tight end is, because you could still play it's Beanie Bishop and Cam Sutton that you're expecting to take on, kind of a dual role in the slot, kind of like depending on the body type, depending on the down and distance, which one's going to be out on the field. But in this one specifically, because it's Luke McCaffrey, a smaller receiver as well, that kind of means, like, to me, it would be a Beanie Bishop matchup anyway. So I wonder if they could have both on the field. Maybe Cam Sutton's like a tight end eraser in this one, or the other answer that I would give you is it's Deshaun Elliott. And again, if it means playing him up in the box or doing stuff in that way, and you still want to have the two high safety looks, you can bring DeMonte Casey on the field. But Cam Sutton can also play safety. I think that's really, hasn't been talked about enough. Like, you're getting a player back now, which, agree or disagree with bringing him back into the mix in general. I get it. Don't get me wrong, but he's here. Nothing we can do about it now. And I think from a football perspective, he's going to add a lot to what this defense can do in terms of mixing up their coverages because of all the positions he can play. So from that standpoint, I'm certainly excited to see how they do it. But this to me is a game where you could, I think that you could see Beanie Bishop and Cam Sutton both on the field, with Cam Sutton giving a lot of attention to those tight ends.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. I don't really have a ton to say about the defense now with the Steelers. I think we've talked a lot about that.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing to me is, like, I'm just sticking with the Cam Sutton thing for a second. If Joey Porter Jr. is going to shadow Terry McLaurin, their number 2 wide receiver, actually, I think Zach Ertz has been their second most productive receiver.
Zach Ertz is their second most productive receiver. He's got the second most targets on the team after Scary Terry.
Just from a body type perspective, if you look at their receiving group, like Noah Brown is the second guy that I'm thinking about here. Yeah, the one that got away, cute Katy Perry. I'm thinking, like, is that a Dante Jackson matchup, or is that how you use Cam Sutton, just because of, like, the body type that he can man up with guys? If you're going into, like, press man, which the Steelers don't necessarily do a ton of, Dante Jackson's been a very good zone corner this year for the Steelers, but I'm still not sure that he's a guy that you want pressing up at the line of scrimmage, getting his hands on guys within 5 yards. Like, to me, that could be Cam Sutton more so. So I'm wondering too, like, is that a way that you utilize him? Do you see Dante Jackson maybe get some snap slots against Luke McCaffrey? Like, there's a lot of different things. The Steelers haven't had to, really disguise their coverages a lot because offenses haven't made them do it. But, like, I'm curious if this is kind of the turning point for that in the season.
Yeah, that could be the case. I think you're right, where traditional, if you're not excluding a tight end, Noah Brown is like their wide receiver 2. And I don't think that Dante Jackson is going to be like press man on him. If they want to use Cam Sutton more in that role. We've seen Cam Sutton in the past in a Steeler uniform have success doing that. Now, it is his first week back from his suspension. He hasn't played football in a long time, so I'm curious to see what Cam Sutton is actually going to look like in his week 1, not necessarily the Steelers week 1, but this is week 1 for him.
So he's been able to be in the facility, like, actually practicing with the team now since the bye week, obviously, which that was like a perfect time in terms of lining up with his suspension. But he's been able to be in contact with the coaching staff for a month. Obviously, the defense that he played in before, like, from a mental standpoint, certainly think he's going to be there. Yeah, I guess the biggest thing is, like, just
physically, is he football in football shape? That's the thing. And so I'm, like, curious as we're talking about how Cam Sutton, we're talking as if Cam Sutton could have a really big role in this game. And I don't know necessarily how much he might actually play, thinking about it, just because of how his football shape is going to be.
Yeah, the matchup, like, I think gives credence to the idea he's going to play a lot, but you're right. Like, I don't know where he's at in terms of his physical ability to contribute in that regard. John mentioned, before we get away from the defense thing, we got to stop the run. I think if we do, should be in good shape. Way too many big runs against the Giants. See, that's the thing. Like, that's why I brought up the Tyrone Tracy thing, because they were able to get the Steelers into lighter boxes by having a running back that can catch the ball that he can. Because you got to play Peyton Wilson over Landon Roberts a lot more, and you get the Steelers into lighter boxes, you can space them out. more. And I think that the Commanders are kind of equipped to be able to do the same thing. So, yeah, you certainly got to, stop the run more and give up less explosive runs than you gave up against the Giants if you want a shot in this one. Obviously, at this point in their careers, Tyron Tracy's a better athlete than Austin Eckler is, but he's still a dangerous player, obviously, once the ball gets in his hands. And he's averaging like over 5 yards per carry this year as well. So, again, I can't say it enough. This coaching staff, I think, has done a really good job in putting players in positions to succeed. Switching to the Steelers offense, one thing that I'm curious about now that he is back, I'll bring this up first and foremost. No hamstring issue, listed as a full participant, no injury designation. You had the bye week to think about it. Do we see a Justin Fields package?
Tomlin teased it a couple weeks ago. The fans have definitely been talking about it, and I think that we have talked about it pretty much every week since Russell Wilson has taken over as the starter. It makes too much sense to not have a package for Justin Fields, whether you want to use that in short down and distances or where you want to get into goal line and you want to bring him in. I just think that you would be not putting your best foot forward if you're not utilizing his legs as a weapon still. And that doesn't mean that you have to use him necessarily like a Taysom Hill all the time where he's going out and running routes as well. I don't think that's going to happen. But as far as if you just want him to be a wildcat running quarterback in short down and distance and on the goal line, I just think that that's something that is going to be a weapon for the Steelers moving forward if they want to utilize that. We saw what it can do through the first 6 weeks of this season. And we even debated before we saw Russell Wilson that it is a bigger drop-off to lose his legs than to gain Russell Wilson's arm. I think we would both agree that through 2 games, we don't agree with that anymore. I think that the impact of having Russell Wilson as a passing quarterback has been greater than what Justin was able to do in this offense with his legs. But still being able to utilize that, I think that it makes too much sense. I think that having the bye week and being able to prepare for it, and even Tomlin saying last week that option is going to be on the table as long as he's on the roster, I think it makes a ton of sense. They need to utilize it, and I don't think that they're putting the best offense out on the field if they don't bring it out at least a couple times a game just to get him some touches, because when he takes off with the football, good things happen. We saw it several times throughout this season so far. And I think that even though Russell Wilson is going to be your starting quarterback, that does not mean that Justin Fields can't have a participation role in this as well.
Yes. Earlier in the show, like very early, brought up, it was my boy LA, aren't good in the red zone. And I was looking at the red zone numbers. Washington, not really good in the red zone on either side of the ball, but they are 26th in terms of red zone scoring touchdowns. So they've been limited to field goals a lot when they get into the red zone. I will say, though, one thing for the Steelers has kind of been the same. They're 30th in red zone turning touchdowns as opposed to field goals. That is something where I feel like Justin's legs could be of benefit, because that making something out of nothing in the red zone when the plays aren't there is something that we saw. Obviously, I think that was the biggest thing he was able to do. So, yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. I think it has to happen. He's too good of an athlete to just completely throw to the side and not utilize in any capacity. I don't want it to become like too gimmicky, I guess, or like overuse it, but I still think it has its place for sure. And I'm curious to see. Like, I think Arthur Smith's a creative guy. Like we've been harping a lot on the Commanders' offense and their coaching staff and how good they've done. I think we got to show the Steelers some love too. I think Arthur Smith's done a great job considering what he's had at his disposal this year. And I think that they're only going to get better. I think they're going in the right direction. I'm not saying, again, the addition of Mike Williams, like it's not necessarily a needle mover for me because of who Mike Williams is as a player at this point in time. But I think just in terms of like the one thing that he does so well, it's going to be able to get a safety out of the box at times. It's going to be able to make plays down the field from time to time. And that can open up things for the running game. That can open up things for other players. So you're not only getting Mike Williams, you're getting everything else that kind of surrounds that addition to me. So
you're getting the aura. That's what you're getting.
The aura of 2024, Mike Williams, whatever that might be.
But I agree. I mean, having Mike Williams on the field changes how you have to defend.
Honestly, this
based
has been
off of the skill set.
This has been a point that people have brought up too. Like, are they waiting until we get into division play to break out the Justin Fields stuff, which is very possible. We were curious if we would see against the Giants. Obviously didn't play because of the hamstring thing. They made it seem like it was nothing. So we'll see if we see that come to fruition this week. But that's a good point too. Maybe they wait another week because they don't want to put it on tape for the Ravens.
What did you think about what Joe says here? The offense is executing consistently enough to have a luxury package like that, though. Plenty of times they can't even do the basics. I would say that whenever you're not doing the basics well, what is better than just having Justin Fields running the football? I mean, that's just playing a little devil's advocate to that, but if they're not doing basics well, just put the ball in his hands and have him run.
I mean, to be honest, what exactly... I don't know that I'm necessarily disagreeing with it, though, in terms of the execution to me has really been about what they've done in the red zone, right? Which is where Justin can improve what they've done. I think as a whole, I've been impressed with what the offense
between the 20s, they've been good.
Yeah.
I think
there have been the ball relatively with ease. The one thing that I will say is they shoot themselves in the foot in terms of pre-snap penalties or a Broderick Jones holding or face mask call at least once or twice a game. But maybe that's what he's talking about.
I mean, that is Broderick Jones basics. He has that down pat.
And it honestly, I don't want to single out one player, but let's single out one player. Who else has really shot themselves in the foot in that capacity the way Broderick has? I feel like he's individually killed.
I would say
he's individually killed 4 drives that I can think of.
Who has shot the Steelers in the head more than Broderick Jones the last 2 games? They are single plays that would have been scoring plays that you could lead back to Broderick Jones messing up.
Yeah. I don't know if we're going to get shadow banned from YouTube for saying that statement, but Arthur Smith has been a massive improvement
with a paintball gun
spot over what we've seen and what we've had over the past 5 years. Yeah, it feels like they're running an actual offense at the very least. I'm not saying Arthur Smith's been some world beater for them at offense, but when you have such a low bar and you actually bring in an NFL offense, and it seems like guys are in the right places to succeed, and talking to some of the guys saying they feel like there's an actual identity and they understand the purpose behind what they're doing. I think that's the biggest difference for me. You have to respect what they're doing in both facets. They can run the ball, and because of that, they're able to set up the pass. Russell Wilson has played, to me, it's only 2 games, but he's played a top 12 quarterback within those 2 games. If he continues to play like this, that greatly increases the ceiling of what you thought this team was going to be. We weren't sure what we were getting in him or Justin preseason. And with the weapons they have, the state of the offensive line, I think Arthur Smith deserves a ton of credit for what this offense has done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you're finally seeing what we thought we were getting with Arthur Smith unfold, more so because Russell Wilson is the quarterback. And that really plays into something we've talked about, where with Justin Fields in there, it was still a Russell Wilson designed offense with Justin Fields operating it. So it's not going to look as good as it could be, most likely. But with Russell Wilson coming in, playing at the level that he did, having the run game evolve with Russell Wilson coming in as well, that's the vision that we saw with this offense, is domination of running the football mixed with efficient pass plays. I think you've been getting that the last two games, and I think that moving forward, that's something where the narrative of the Steelers has changed nationally. And I mentioned this on this week's Steelers show as well, is that over the last couple of weeks, you've seen a national narrative of the Steelers change, and people having to admit that they were wrong based off of a small sample size, but it's a sample size that breeds a lot of confidence in the Steelers, talking about how they can be a contender not only for the AFC North, but maybe moving into the playoffs, maybe not on the Chiefs level, but they could be winning a few playoff games because you have an offense that's moving the ball efficiently, putting up some scoring offense. That's all that we've ever wanted, and quite frankly, all the Steelers has ever needed because of the defense that they have. If you have a combination of those two, complementary football, you have a really solid, efficient team. And I think that Arthur Smith has been a huge hand in that.
I was looking at just some numbers here. Obviously, we know the Steelers' defense is one of the 5 best in the league. But offensively, right now, 16th in yards. And the passing volume hasn't been there. 26th in passing yards per game. 8th in rushing yards per game, though. 13th in points, so top half of the league there. Third down percentage, they're 12th, but it's the same percentage as the top 10. So basically, tied for top 10 essentially. I think that's the biggest difference is they're winning on the money downs, both offensively and defensively. They're either getting off the field or they're extending drives. And again, the biggest thing to me is, are they going to have answers in the red zone? Because they put up 37 points against the Jets when 2 times they stalled out inside the 5. Same thing against the Giants. Like they were stalling out drives with inside the 10-yard line. If those convert to touchdowns instead of field goals, and I'm making it seem like it's a simple thing, but it's not, I get it. But if they can make just 1 or 2 more plays over the course of a game, it's going to be a massive difference for this offense and give them much larger margin of error for their defense to not have to be as ridiculously good as they have been, because you do feel like there are some offenses starting with this week that are going to test them in that capacity.
Where do you think the Steelers offense has an advantage over the Washington Commanders defense? I think it's in the run game. I think that the defensive line for the Commanders leaves a lot to be desired. I think that the Steelers have shown in the last several weeks that they have gotten more efficient at running the football, and I think that they could take advantage of that. I think the linebackers for the Commanders are pretty good, but what's in front of the linebackers, I think, especially that you're getting Zach Frazier back this week, I think the Steelers offense in the run game specifically can have a good day getting and winning that line of scrimmage. And I think that the rushing attack is where they could take advantage of that in this game. But what about you?
Everywhere. No, I mean, it's weird because, like, on paper, though, seriously, like, you would think so, which is, again, like, speaks to Dan Quinn and what he's doing with these guys. Because to your point, you know, Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu in the middle of that defense, they're 2 good players, but, like, Bobby Wagner's been signing 1-year deals now for like 3 straight years. Like,
Bobby Wagner's like what, 34? Like he's
right.
You would have thought that when he left Seattle the first time, his career was almost over.
And Johnny Newton up front is a really good player. But beyond that, man, like I look at what our receivers should be going against in Benjamin St-Juste, Mike Sainristil, who everybody knows that I love, but he's a smaller guy. Then Emmanuel Forbes, who's an even smaller guy. Like the Steelers wide receivers have, to me, a massive advantage on paper in this one. But what you said about the run game, like Washington they've been had in the run. They're bottom 5 in terms of rushing yards allowed per game. So you would think with the way that the Steelers have been running the ball, 3 straight 100-yard games for Najee Harris, that lines up for him to be able to do it again. And maybe even more so, because if they have to play 1 less guy in the box due to the threat that's being posed by Mike Williams going downfield, or, you know, maybe Calvin Austin's taking that attention away, and maybe he's getting more respect after the performance that he had in his last game against the Giants. If they have to play another deep safety, 1 less guy in the box, that we should even be more effective. And Zach Frazier back in the mix. So, like, to me, yeah, I just, on paper, I'm seeing food right now when I look at the Washington Commanders defense compared to the Steelers offense. But I don't want to be like
no Lattimore either in the secondary.
Yeah,
so the piece that they traded for, they're not even going to have this week.
St-Juste, I think, will draw the Pickens matchup. Good luck. He's not been good. So I'm very confident in terms of the Steelers' ability to get the matchups that they want across the board in this one. And also Washington, I think the 13 personnel is going to be big. Like, to me, this seems like a big Darnell Washington game to me on the surface. Washington's been really bad when teams run 13 personnel against them. Steelers would love, I think, to line up in 13 personnel. So we'll see. But that's kind of where I see things from the Steelers offensive standpoint. I don't see a matchup that I would love from the Washington side whatsoever.
I don't think so. They just don't have a lot of dudes on their defense. Like, you look at the Steelers really defense, you look at defenses around the NFL, they have got dudes, but they don't have that on Washington's defense. Nobody that scares you on that defense.
We've obviously spent a ton of time talking about the Steelers defense versus the Washington offense, but like I do want to say this, just because like I made it seem like the Steelers have such a large advantage offensively going against the Washington defense. I think Washington's going to be able to move the ball on the Steelers defense. I really do. I just think the question is, are they going to be able to, as the Steelers have been able to, hold teams out of the end zone? And Washington hasn't been able to put the ball in the end zone that much when they've gotten down there. They've been very good between the 20s, similar to the Steelers, but they've had drives stall out. So
they've had a ton of splash plays, like ton of the big play touchdowns.
that's the thing. Even though Jaden's thrown to his first read so much, I feel like when he gets out on the move, like you never know. Obviously, he could take off at any point, but he keeps his eyes down the field. Like he's always he's always wanting to and willing to take that shot. So even if he breaks the pocket, it's not a given that he's taken off.
Well, and that's why I said I think that the Steelers defense this week has to be more disciplined than they have in any game this season because of that threat. Because when he rolls out, he's not necessarily going to take off. He's still keeping his eyes downfield. I think that this is the biggest test that the Steelers defense has had. And I mentioned, I don't know who it was that said it in the comments. This is going to be this biggest test for Washington this week going against this defense. But I also think that the inverse of that is true. This is the biggest test for the Steelers defense so far going against this offense.
Sure. Like from a physical running standpoint, we thought that was going to be LA. Like they came in, the Chargers were averaging like over 200 rushing yards per game going into week 3. But obviously we have seen a vast difference in terms of the upgrade the Steelers have made to be able to stop the run this year since that take place. Now we're seeing a team that can space us out. And honestly, coming off that last game where we played the Giants, where they gave up the explosive runs, where they gave up the splash plays, like that to me mirrors this more. Plus, you obviously have the better quarterback play. So that is to me why I think the ultimate equalizer in this one is going to be the pass rush, as it typically is for the Steelers defense. You got a rookie left tackle in Brandon Coleman out of TCU, who's rotated in this year, and he looked pretty good going against Brian Burns. But he's just see a lot of Alex Highsmith. And then Andrew Wiley on the other side is questionable. But even if it is him, going back to his time with the Chiefs and stuff like that, I mean, TJ's gotten the better of him. TJ gets the better of pretty much anybody. So, like, if the Steelers are able, obviously, to create havoc with their pass rush, I really am curious to see about Preston Smith. Like, I want to see how he mixes in. I think he could see 15 to 20 in this one, especially because of no Nick Herbig. And he's just a different body type than what they have. Like, listed at 265. Yeah, he ain't 265. Like, that was what he weighed at the combine. And I'm telling you right now, he is much heavier than he was at the combine.
He's a thick boy. Thick spelled with 3 C's, no K, and OI on the boy.
I saw a pretty cool story about him when he was being drafted in 2015. He thought he was going to become a Steeler at one point. We ended up taking Bud Dupree that year. But he was definitely linked to the Steelers, ended up going to Washington. Actually, this is where he started his career. So probably pretty cool for him to be able to go back here in his first game post-trade. But, yeah, I'm excited about that. Have a feeling their line is going to be getting called for a few penalties that blow drives. You were injured blocking this team, and then your quarterback likes to extend plays. They're going to get at least 2. Yeah, I guess that is the one. Like anytime that you have a quarterback that does, roll out, that does extend plays, the longer you have to block for, the more likely it is that you take a holding call. How many times do we see it? Like that's why I almost always expect there to be a hold on like a Hail Mary or something like that. But again, it has to be like offensive linemen are going to hold. It's a matter of are they impacting the play? Like that is when they'll call a hold, as if it's so obvious and it's so telling that that's going to impact the play. If they're just like on the other side of the field holding the guy, they're not going to call that. So, yeah, I mean, that's definitely a good shout, though, too. Like, I guess this offensive line probably more prone to take those types of penalties because of the way that Jaden plays.
Hey, well, shout out to Julian Edelman. Good thing that they're probably not wearing white gloves on the Commanders' offensive line with the white jerseys of the Steelers that they're going to be wearing on Sunday. You could see the pull better with those black gloves or whatever they're going to be wearing.
Yeah, and Joey better make sure he's not wearing if I'm Joey, I would be matching teams' jerseys with the gloves that I wear every single week.
Yeah.
Wear the burgundy, like whatever.
I think you got to do it. A little handsy with Joey sometimes.
Yeah, but I don't know. Anything else before we get into our predictions about this game? I mean, we feel like we've gone over
We've gone over pretty much everything. I just think
other than special teams,
exciting matchup. It's I mean, special teams, their kicker's injured. Our kicker is the best in the league.
The Steelers have a special teams advantage over everybody, especially because right now it's not just Boswell who's won special teams player of the month for the first 2 months of the season. The special teams unit as a whole, Corliss Waitman has been a massive upgrade from what they had last year. Their punt gunning has been exceptional, whether it's been James Pierre, Terrell Edmonds, whoever it's been getting down there. I feel like they're not getting anything returned against them. They've obviously had the splash play now in Calvin Austin with the punt return for a touchdown. And then they're blocking kicks seemingly every week. So, like, yeah, special teams across the board, fantastic this year. They have an edge there against everybody. That's no different this week.
Yeah, shout out to Danny Smith for that one. I love anytime there's a big play on special teams. I just love when the camera cuts to Danny.
They know,
Smith.
they know right where it's going. They know who they're looking for.
Yeah, and he's got
screen time.
He's got a half pound of gum in his cheek. It's great.
All right, before we get into our store predictions, as we always like to do, we want to get some bold predictions. What do you got for me, offensively and defensively? What are your bold predictions for this week?
Defensively, I think that the Steelers are going to, and I don't know if this is necessarily bold. I need to actually, before I make this prediction, I need to look at his actual game log totals for this.
I wonder where this is going. You said this is defensively?
This is defensively. So let me look at this. I have to actually look at game logs. Where is this at? Yeah. Okay. I think that the Steelers are going to hold Jaden Daniels to under 50 yards rushing. I needed to see if that was bold or not. Based off his game logs, I mean, like, he does do that fairly consistently. But I'll have a bolder one. I think that Joey Porter Jr. is going to get a pick off of a target to Scary Terry. And then offensively, I think Najee Harris is going to have his 4th consecutive 100-yard rushing game and add a touchdown on top of it.
Okay. I like it. It's kind of, I think that's like in the same breath as Derek's bold prediction from the afternoon drive yesterday, in terms of Najee, that is. My defensive bold prediction is going to be a Patrick Queen interception. Jaden's going to try to extend the play. Patrick's going to be, it's going to be like around the line of scrimmage as well, I think. My offensive bold prediction is the running backs will combine to total 3 touchdowns. I'm not going to give you one player. I think combined, whether it's Najee, Jalen, Cordero back in the mix, combined, that group gives you 3 touchdowns this week.
I like it. We also got Preston Smith sack. Book it. 2.5 on the season.
DMV where he started, which is like he had 9 2 years ago. I think 8.5 last year, and then just 2.5 so far this year. I think the run defense has still been pretty good, setting the edge. So I don't think it's a bad. I don't think it's a bad shot, especially if he takes some snaps from Highsmith and is going against that rookie tackle.
Yeah, that's true. Does Justin count as a running back?
Not for this prediction. Though. He does not.
Well, what if Russell Wilson's on the field and he lines up as a running back?
That'd be crazy. If that's the type of packages we're talking about, I think that'd be hilarious. How about if they line up? We make a lot about the pony formation, right? What if we see Justin Fields as one of those guys? Like we've been talking about it being Najee and Jalen on the field at the same time. What if it's like Justin and Najee or Justin and Jalen?
I think that would be cool, honestly.
Dude, yeah. Again, like I don't want to get too gimmicky, and are you doing too much with an offense? Like the Steelers' offense hasn't been so good that they can just we're not the Detroit Lions yet.
Yeah.
Where we're just throwing everything, throwing the kitchen sink at teams. But like it is interesting to think about just putting all your best athletes out there that you can and making them, be honest. So, man, there's a lot of possibilities with this. I'm curious to see how deep into the bag Arthur Smith is willing to get. But I'm excited for that. Okay, score prediction. What do you think?
I think that it'll be a fairly high-scoring game. I think that both teams are going to be able to move the football efficiently. It'll be up to how they finish on those drives. I think the Steelers are going to win this one 31-27.
30 points again. They are the second highest scoring team in the league since Russell Wilson took over at quarterback. It's only been 2 games. But like 31.5 points per game, I believe. 33. No, it's 31. 31.5 points per game. Which, if that was their total for the season, would only trail the Detroit Lions 33.4 points per game. So, all right, I like it. Also, if this is like your first time tuning in, Tyler and I do not always pick the like we haven't picked the Steelers at times. We're not just homers that always pick the Steelers week in and week out. However, this week we're both picking the Steelers. I also had the Steelers winning this one. If you listen to the way that I kind of described the way that I feel like they have the advantages on offense and even, quite a bit on defense, you'd think that I don't think this is going to be a close game. It's not the case. I do believe that this is going to be a close game. 28-24, the Pittsburgh Steelers walk out of this one with a win, going to 7-2, which would be Pretty massive. I want to ask you, because you said you weren't sure how you were feeling about that Thursday night game. Well, like even by the end of it, you weren't feeling a certain way, like about who you wanted to win.
Well, no, by the end of it, I was certain that I wanted the Bengals to win.
Really?
But
Okay.
ultimately, I wanted a tie because I feel like that would be
Sure.
best as far as like standings go. But I wanted the Bengals to win just because I felt like, as of right now, the Ravens are ahead of them, and as of that win, the
So
Ravens are technically first place in the AFC North.
I wanted the Ravens to win the entire time. I didn't waver on it because to me, I feel like the Steelers and Ravens are both playoff teams. I feel like the Bengals are certainly good. Their offense is good enough to be a playoff team for sure.
Yeah.
But I'd be worried about them getting into the field and potentially having to see them in the playoffs. I'd rather them be out, which I don't think was going to be a possibility with the Ravens. Win or lose that game, I think that they were going to make the playoffs. With the Bengals, because they're now 4-6, I think that there's a lesser chance that they get in at all. So I'd rather just keep them completely out.
I guess that's a good point. I was thinking selfishly about the AFC North title, but
which I get it. I don't think that there's necessarily a wrong answer, but that's kind of the way I was viewing it. Was I feel like us and the Ravens are, I don't want to say locked, but very good chances of making the playoffs. The Bengals, if they win that one, would have felt pretty good about as a wild card as well. This way, at 4-6, at the very least, they're going to have to win games against like the Chargers and Broncos, who they both play, which are also two wild card teams. So like that's only going to help the Steelers as well, regardless of which one wins. So
yeah. The cool thing about that Thursday night football game, personally for me, is in one of my fantasy leagues, I have Lamar Jackson and Jamar Chase on the same team.
I have Burrow and Chase.
Yeah, Burrow and Chase. That was even better.
Yeah. I have a Burrow Chase stack in two different leagues, and they got like 100 points.
Yeah,
between the
two. I think with Lamar and Chase, it was like 88 point something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough. That's tough. Somebody that I know went against Burrow Chase. Oh, geez. Oh, who was she talking about earlier? She mentioned somebody from a fantasy perspective.
Oh, so she, you might enjoy this. So Jordan Love is on a bye week this week, so she can't start him in her fantasy league. She does not have enough trust in Dak Prescott, so she dropped Dak and picked up Russell Wilson and is starting Russell Wilson.
Okay. I mean, to be honest, like, I don't know if this is the week, next week going against Baltimore with the way their secondaries looked, potentially without Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah.
So I have Russ as well, but it's you start two QBs. So like,
okay.
Yeah. I have him and Burrow.
Yeah. But it's not that I wasn't impressed. I was just shocked that she made the move.
Yeah. Getting aggressive.
I like it. I mean, she had to do something.
For Russie.
She saw how many points I scored on Thursday Night Football. Had to do something.
All right, we appreciate you guys. A lot of activity in the chat today. We appreciate that. Obviously, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Hit us in the comments, even if you're watching back, if you weren't part of the live chat. But we certainly appreciate those of you that were part of the live stream. Always love doing this. We will be back next Saturday for another one of these before the Ravens. That's obviously going to be a fun one to discuss. So again, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Follow us on everything at Around the 412. For Tyler, for Smitty, this has been Steelers Saturday Sit Down as part of Around the 412. We'll talk to you next time.